It was a Tuesday, with Shreveport's heat so intense it felt as if thoughts themselves might sizzle before midday. Naomi Ellis, a 25-year-old waitress, had just tied her apron, smoothed her curls in Mabel's kitchen's smudged staff bathroom mirror, and retrieved her notepad. Mabel's was the sort of establishment where regulars bypassed menus and cornbread arrived without asking. Naomi wasn't seeking complications. Rent was due soon and her car's air conditioning had finally given up entirely. But when the bell above the door chimed, announcing 3 men, the atmosphere within the diner subtly shifted. They weren't typical sightseers. No matching shirts, no selfie sticks, no slow southern drawl. These men emanated wealth, the kind that never inquiries about lunch specials. All wore impeccably tailored attire, and their watch faces gleamed even in the filtered sunlight. Naomi's gaze, however, fixated on the eldest. Tall, silver-haired with a sharp jawline, his gait was composed, as if he commanded vast domains, perhaps the entire thoroughfare. She didn't immediately recognize him, not until they settled at a booth and he reached for a menu. That was the moment. A birthmark, dark and crescent-shaped, rested precisely on the back of his hand, near his thumb. Time itself seemed to simply halt. "Excuse me, sir, my father bore the very same mark." Silence. The man's fingers, midway through grasping the menu, froze. His 2 companions looked up, one confused, the other cautiously alert. Naomi blinked, processing her own spontaneous utterance. But the words were already spoken. The man, William Ashford, slowly raised his eyes. His expression held no offense, no surprise, just an intense focus, like someone attempting to recall a forgotten melody from 3 decades past. Naomi remained motionless, clutching her tray, her heart thumping against her ribs. No one at table 5 had yet touched their menus. He said nothing, simply regarded her with an unwavering gaze. "What did you say?" "My father, he possessed that identical mark on his hand." A younger man with slick-back hair leaned toward William, whispering urgently. William didn't flinch. His gaze remained locked on Naomi, as if she had just uttered words in a tongue he hadn't heard for ages. The tension in the room grew palpable, heavy. She felt eyes subtly shifting, a few patrons trying to avoid looking yet observing intently, the kind of stillness that causes skin to prickle, hinting at an unspoken event, even if no one else comprehends its nature. "Forgive me, I've simply never encountered one like it except for, yes, never mind." She turned to retreat, but his voice arrested her. "What was your father's name?" "Clinton R. Ellis." William's facial expression remained stoic, yet something flickered behind his eyes for a fraction of a second. A momentary flash of something ancient, perhaps a ghost of a memory. "Clint Ellis," he repeated. He gently set his menu down. It was then that Naomi felt her knees weaken, because no one had ever called him Clint except her mother, and one other man Naomi had once glimpsed in a faded Polaroid, half buried in a shoebox at the back of her closet. A man her mother had never, ever spoken of. She didn't anticipate a further question. She didn't desire one. She simply wished to collect her order slips and vanish. Instead, William said, "We require a moment before ordering." She nodded, then walked directly into the kitchen, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Behind the serving line, Chef Reggie surveyed her. "Concern, you all right, Naomi?" he inquired. She nodded, offered a falsehood, forced yes. But inside her mind, something profound had fractured. She couldn't stop gazing at that man's hand, because that identical mark used to grace her father's hand whenever he held hers. And now, suddenly, it rested upon the hand of a man whose worth surpassed every structure on Texas Street. Yet, that was merely the genesis. Naomi avoided their table for a solid 15 minutes. She paced restlessly behind the swinging kitchen doors, her fingers tapping against the receipt printer like a metronome stuck on a frantic rhythm. Chef Reggie, peeking through a crack, whistled. Amused. "That table of suits still hasn't ordered." "What did you do? Inform them we're out of tea?" Naomi managed a weak smile. Resigned. "No, I just said something I shouldn't have." She offered no further explanation. What could she possibly utter? Sarcastic. "Hey, Reggie, it appears one of those individuals might have engaged romantically with my mother 3 decades ago and could conceivably be my biological father." exasperated. Would you care for a lemonade refill while we unravel that complex revelation? She wiped her hands on her apron and finally pushed through the door. Her eyes immediately sought out William Ashford's table. He remained there, composed, still observing. His colleagues appeared less so. The elder man, with a receding hairline, perhaps in his mid-50s, whispered something sharply into William's ear. William dismissed it with a casual gesture. The younger individual, likely no older than 30, simply looked impatient. She approached slowly, notepad in hand, words knotted in her throat. Neutral. Ready to order? Her voice had reverted to its professional waitress mode, polite, neutral, forgettable. William folded his hands. Calmly. Just coffee for now, black please. The others followed suit, efficiently. Sandwiches, salads, nothing complicated. Naomi scribbled, nodded, and began to turn. But before she fully departed the table, William spoke again. Direct. You mentioned your father was Clint Ellis? Naomi hesitated. She kept her voice low, hesitant. Yes, sir. Probing. Did he ever reside in Baton Rouge? Her heart skipped a beat. Before I was born, I believe, my mother seldom spoke of it. His eyes subtly darkened. That name wasn't merely familiar to him. It held significant meaning. She could discern it in the way he gazed past her for a moment, as if the very air had subtly altered. He played trumpet, she added, an impulse not knowing why. Used to tour with a few jazz bands. Passed away when I was 11. William didn't react immediately, then softly, I remember. Naomi's chest tightened. You knew him? I knew of him, William stated briefly. His colleagues exchanged a knowing look, one of those glances that implies much without words. Naomi pressed her lips together, nodded, and walked away. She poured the coffee, her hands persistently trembling. Back in the kitchen, she retrieved her phone and sent a text to one person. Mom, quick, did you ever know someone named William Ashford? No immediate reply. She typed again, more direct. Rich white man, left-hand birthmark from Louisiana. Still nothing. She stared at the screen for a protracted period, the edges of her thoughts spiraling. She hadn't contemplated her father's past in years. Growing up, it had solely been her and her mother. Clint Ellis had always remained a blur. A man in a photograph, a distant melody in an old record, someone who laughed loudly but left little else behind, except that mark and incessant questions. Always questions. William stirred his coffee slowly. He hadn't touched the beverage, hadn't spoken much since Naomi's departure. The man to his left, perhaps his CFO, finally leaned in. Probing, Bill, shall I investigate her discreetly? William shook his head once, firmly, no, not yet. The younger man spoke next, cynically. She's probably just seeking financial gain. William turned to him, challenging. You believe I lack understanding of people's motivations by now. The young executive sat back, silence, but William wasn't angry. He was unsettled. And that was a rare state for him. He had built his immense fortune by consistently staying one step ahead. But this was something entirely different. That birthmark, that name, that face. He hadn't seen Cassandra in 3 decades. A night that was never meant to hold consequence had clearly bequeathed something far more substantial than a mere memory. He discreetly pulled out his phone beneath the table and typed slowly, serious, Cassandra, did you ever have a daughter? Typed, serious, her name is Naomi. He stared at the screen, awaiting a reply. None came. He put the phone away and gazed out the window. He could see his own hand on the table, that mark that had always signified nothing. But now, it might have just become the prelude to everything. He wasn't ready to accept that yet. Urgent. Mom, where did you encounter that name? She stepped outside the back door, the thick Louisiana heat immediately enveloping her as she initiated the call. Short pause. Hello? Direct. Explain precisely what occurred. Naomi leaned against the red brick wall, surveying the parking lot. Explaining. He entered today with 2 other men. They sat at table 6. I noticed his hand and Mom, shocked. He possesses the same birthmark Daddy had, identical shape. And when I mentioned it, he looked at me as if he'd witnessed a specter. Her mother grew quiet on the other end. Flatly. You knew him, Naomi stated, her voice flat. Slowly. I met him a long time ago, her mother replied slowly. Before you were born. We were in Baton Rouge. Thoughtful. Remember I mentioned a short-term job there? Skeptical. You claimed it was for work. Defensive. It was for work. I was working the front desk of a hotel. He was a guest. He stayed perhaps 2 weeks. We grew close, then he departed. Matter of fact. That's the entirety of it. Naomi closed her eyes. Direct. Did you ever inform him you were pregnant? Her mother's prolonged silence offered its own answer. Long pause. I didn't wish to pursue that path, she finally confessed. Defensive. What was I expected to do? Contact a man who barely said goodbye and tell him he left something behind? Naomi swallowed hard. Hurt. You didn't consider I deserved to know? Whisper. I didn't think he would care. Her mother's voice was barely audible. Naomi looked up at the sky. Her thoughts hadn't even had a chance to settle before the back door pushed open behind her. It was Reggie, casual. Hey, table 6 settled their bill and departed. But one of them left something behind. Said it was for you. He extended a crisp white envelope. No name. Just Naomi, handwritten in a sharp, confident script. She ended the call and opened it immediately. Inside was a folded note and a business card. The card was simple. William Ashford, Ashford Properties Chairman. The back bore a number, handwritten in the same bold ink. No message, just a numeric sequence. She unfolded the note. It read, Serious, if you desire the truth, I am prepared to speak. Just you and I. No legal counsel, no recording devices, no preconceptions. The W. Her hands tightened around the paper. Back inside, Reggie raised an eyebrow. Curious. Friend of the family? Naomi offered no reply, simply tucked the note into her apron and resumed wiping down the recently vacated table. 2 blocks away, in the back of a black SUV, William Ashford sat stone-faced while his 2 colleagues conversed over each other. Warning. You must exercise caution, the younger man insisted, concerned. If news leaks that you fathered a child... Firm. I did not state I fathered anyone, William interjected, cutting him off. Persistent. Still, this could reflect poorly. Investors are observing every move. Mother had concealed such a matter from you for 30 years. How would you feel? Mason offered no reply, simply stared out the opposite window. The elder colleague Jeff spoke more calmly. Bill, if there's even a remote possibility that girl is yours, you need to address it discreetly. You require confirmation. William nodded. I know. Determined. I'll handle it. Pressing. And if she is yours? Jeff pressed. William remained silent. Jeff persisted. Will you endeavor to compensate for lost time, or simply issue a check and depart? The SUV pulled into the hotel's circular drive. William exited without responding, but the heavy sensation in his chest spoke volumes. He wasn't a sentimental individual, hadn't been for decades. But that girl's eyes? They were eyes he had encountered before, though not for a very long time. And now he found he couldn't unsee them. Yet he still didn't know what, if anything, he owed her. Naomi sat in her room that night, cross-legged on her bed, laptop open, the Google search bar blinking expectantly. She typed, William Ashford family, then William Ashford daughter, Ashford scandal, Louisiana. Nothing. It was as if the man had surgically expunged every personal detail from his past. The search results yielded only Forbes articles, massive real estate deals, and charity galas featuring names she couldn't even pronounce. Her phone buzzed again. The same number from the business card. She stared at it, letting it ring unanswered. Then it buzzed once more. A new message. Direct. Just coffee. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. You pick the place. Alone. She waited 5 full minutes before replying. Firmly. The Beehive Diner, Texas Street. You come alone too. He was already there when she arrived, dressed casually, no jacket, sleeves rolled, his wristwatch alone likely costing more than her car. He looked out of place among the cracked vinyl booths and faded Elvis posters, but seemed indifferent. Naomi slid into the seat opposite him, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Coldly, you wish to speak, she stated. He nodded. Simply, I did. Short pause. Probing. Did your mother ever reveal anything about me? Naomi simply stared. Flatly, she said you were temporary. Sighs. Fair. She didn't blink. Direct. Did you know about me? Hermly. No, William said, his voice firm. Emphatic. I didn't. I swear. Silence. The waitress approached, breaking the palpable tension. Politely, coffee for y'all? Naomi nodded. William added, casual. Just black again. Thank you. Naomi leaned in, her eyes now sharp, probing. Sharp. So, what exactly is this? Curiosity? Guilt? A midlife crisis 30 years late? William didn't flinch. Thoughtful. I don't know yet. They sat in the quiet between sips. Then Naomi pulled a photograph from her wallet. Faded, bent, visible. He's gone, she said, her voice soft but firm. Been gone a long time. But I remember that mark. It was the one thing that made me feel connected to him. And then you walked in. William took the photo gently. He stared at it for longer than she expected, then passed it back. Do you desire absolute certainty, he inquired. Naomi raised an eyebrow. You mean DNA? He nodded. She bit her lip. And if it confirms it? William set down his cup. Then I'll cease speculating and begin understanding what it truly signifies. She took a deep breath. Fine, I'll agree. He nodded. My assistant will arrange the kit, a neutral laboratory. You'll receive the results as well. Naomi shook her head. No assistant, no labs you control. We do it my way. William smiled faintly. Accepted. Before she stood, she asked, why now? Why bother? He didn't answer immediately, simply looked down at his hands. Because when someone indicates they might be your offspring, you owe it to both individuals to determine the truth. Then, you live with that answer. Naomi grabbed her bag and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back. If this is genuine, I'm not here for financial compensation. I simply want the truth. William nodded. As do I. 3 days later, Naomi sat in the living room of a testing center, surrounded by beige walls and stiff chairs. William sat 2 seats away, quiet. She completed her paperwork, avoiding his gaze. The technician called their names. Cheek swabs, quick, cold, unremarkable. Afterward, they walked out together onto the sidewalk. William, I'll be in Baton Rouge for the next few weeks. Business. Naomi nodded. I have shifts. I'll be here. Another pause. He extended his hand. Thank you for consenting. She looked at it, studied that mark again, then shook it quickly. I just want to know what's real, she asserted. He nodded. As do I. She turned and walked toward her car. His remained parked. William didn't drive off immediately, just sat in the driver's seat, still gripping the steering wheel with that marked hand. He was a man who had spent his life constructing towering structures. But this girl, she was the first entity to truly shake his foundations. Yet neither was prepared for what the results would ultimately reveal. Naomi almost didn't check the email. She had been avoiding it for 2 agonizing days. The subject line sat there, bold and patiently waiting. Your DNA results are ready. She didn't open it at home, unwilling for her mother to pose questions. She drove to a quiet gas station on the edge of Bossier City, parked under a flickering street lamp, and stared at the screen. She clicked. Then she saw it. 99.98% probability biological parent match. William Ashford. No fanfare, no explosion, just cold facts in stark black text. Her fingers went numb. The world didn't cease, but it certainly didn't feel as if it moved either. She leaned back in the seat, attempting to breathe through the static in her mind. This was real. This man she'd served coffee to, the one who had constructed half the skyline in Louisiana, the man her mother had told her never to fret about, he was her father. She didn't cry. Not yet. She simply stared until the screen dimmed and her reflection stared back at her. Same eyes, same distinct shape. She hadn't noticed it before. Now she couldn't unsee it. William received the identical email. He read it in his hotel suite, standing before a wall of glass that overlooked the majestic Mississippi River. He uttered not a word, simply pressed a finger gently against the birthmark on his hand. Then he opened his safe, extracted a thin leather folder, and sat at the table. Inside lay old documents, contracts, and one faded photograph. Cassandra. She was youthful in the image, laughing, her lips red, sunlight catching in her hair, captured on the final day he saw her. He had kept it, not out of sentimentality, but because he never understood why he couldn't forget her. She was never part of the plan. Neither was a daughter. But now she was a fact. Naomi waited 2 more days before initiating contact. The phone rang twice. Calm hello. It's me. Short pause. You received the results? Hesitant. Yes. Long pause, quietly. And you're my father. William didn't speak immediately then, thoughtful. Would you be willing to meet and discuss? Naomi hesitated, skeptical. What else is there to say? Sighs. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'd prefer to speak in person. She reluctantly agreed. They met the next morning at a neutral location, a tranquil park in Natchitoches, near the Riverwalk. Naomi arrived first, seating herself on a bench. William walked up 5 minutes later holding 2 coffees. He offered her one without speaking. She accepted it but offered no thanks. Accusingly, you knew, she accused. Firmly, I didn't, he countered. But when I saw you, I began recalling events I believed I had long since suppressed. She stared out at the water, sadly. Why did you abandon her? Sighs. I didn't abandon. We didn't conclude on negative terms, but I had a life awaiting me. A different world governed by rules and expectations I was too apprehensive to challenge back then. Hesitant. And when you discovered my existence, he shook his head, frustrated. I didn't discover. Your mother never informed me, not once. Naomi sipped her coffee, thoughtful. Would it have made a difference? He looked her directly in the eye, earnest. Yes. I cannot articulate how, but yes. She didn't entirely believe him, but something in his expression wasn't rehearsed. He wasn't a manic. He took the microphone, spoke a few words, remarkably shorter than people anticipated. Then he looked directly at Naomi as he declared, proudly, this building is named for the woman who taught me what true strength embodies, Naomi Ellis. The crowd erupted in applause. Naomi froze. Her breath caught somewhere in her throat. She hadn't requested this, yet she did not walk away. Later, they sat together in one of the center's quiet offices, just the 2 of them. No handlers, no cameras. Surprised, you didn't have to name it after me, Naomi said. Bluntly, I didn't do it for you, he countered. She raised an eyebrow. Explaining, I did it because it was the right course of action, he explained. Resolute. Because I forfeited years I can never regain, but I can choose what I do with what remains. Naomi leaned back in the chair. Skeptical. You believe this evens the score? Firmly, no, William said. Gravely, nothing ever will. She nodded slowly. Honestly, I'm still angry, she admitted. Somberly, you should be. Curious, but I'm also curious. I wish to know more about you, about what I missed. William smiled faintly, gently. Then let's begin there. They conversed for an hour, perhaps more, about her favorite songs, about the trumpet she used to play before her father passed, about her mother's cooking, and the first time she tasted gumbo in Baton Rouge. He didn't attempt to impress her. She didn't attempt to forgive him. They simply talked, and that, for the very first time, felt like enough. Weeks passed, not swiftly, not painlessly, but something began to form. A routine. A text message here, a phone call there, an invitation to lunch that involved no business discussions, a birthday card that arrived early and wasn't signed by an assistant. It wasn't perfect, but it was authentic. Naomi confided in few people. Some matters one keeps to oneself, sacred and private. But one night, as she cleaned up after closing time at Mabel's, Reggie leaned against the doorframe. Teasingly, still conversing with your affluent father? He teased. Naomi gave him a look. Firmly. Yes, she stated. Resolutely, I am. He nodded. Approvingly. Good. Observational. Sounds like he's trying. Affirmative, he is. Warningly. Just don't allow him to forget who you are, she smiled. Confidently, he won't. Because for once, someone powerful had uttered her name aloud. And he didn't just speak it, he chose it. And now it was entirely up to her what that name would signify moving forward. Sometimes the individuals who wound us are not the ones we despise. They are the ones we almost needed. But healing does not imply pretending the damage never occurred. It signifies choosing to build something regardless, even from the wreckage. If you've ever pondered whether it's too late to rectify a wrong, it is not. But you must participate. Thoughtful with you, consider sharing it with someone who requires a reminder. The truth may cause pain, but sometimes it serves as the very first brick in constructing something new.